2. Hello and welcome to today's web seminar, Automate the Full Performance Testing Cycle to Speed Up Release Time, sponsored by Neotys and featuring Henrik Rex, Performance Specialist at Neotys. I'm your host and moderator, Josiah Renaudin. Thank you for joining us today. Before I hand it off to the speaker, let me explain the controls on this console. If you experience any technical issues, please send a note through the question field located beneath the panels. We'll be on hand to help as quickly as possible. Our responses can be read in the Q&A panel to the left of the slides. This is also the same way to submit questions. We welcome all comments and inquiries during today's event, so feel free to ask as many as you'd like. We'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A session after the presentation. Today's event contains polling questions and a live demo, which can both be viewed within the slide view. To optimize your bandwidth for the best viewing experience possible, please close out any unnecessary applications that may be running in the background. At the bottom of your console is a widget toolbar. These widgets open panels. The console opens with 3 on your screen: the speaker, Q&A, and the slide panels. All of these panels can be moved around and resized to your liking. If you accidentally close one, click the respective widget to reopen the panel in its original place. Hover your cursor over these icons to reveal labels identifying each widget. Through these icons, you can download the speaker slides and white papers, as well as share this event with friends and colleagues. This event is being recorded and will be made available for on-demand viewing. Once the recording is ready, you'll receive an email with instructions how to access the presentation and slides on demand. With that said, I'd like to introduce and pass controls to our speaker.
Hi, hi everyone. Thanks to joining this webinar. So today we will try to have a 40-minute presentation about how to include performance testing in DevOps or agile. Let's start with agile and then talk about DevOps later on. And like mentioned, we would do a short demonstration. Of course, if you have anything, like mentioned, just drop your questions. The idea is to answer us all things that are unclear to this presentation. All right, so let's start. So today, like mentioned, we talked about DevOps. So today, you will see a lot of Legos. Fortunately, if you don't like Lego, I'm really sorry about it, but you will still see a lot of Legos everywhere. So the agenda, before we start to the main content of this webinar, I think it's important that you know who we are, Neotys. So let's take a few minutes to remind who is Neotys, what we do, and then we can go deliver the rest of the content. So Neotys has been on the market since 12 years now. We've been focused on one single thing, deliver a solution that helps you to deliver performance application in production. So we started initially, no, that's a mistake, sorry. We started initially our company in France, so it's a French-based company, but our main market is in the U.S., so that's why we have offices in the U.S. and other part of the country. We have a couple of large reference around the globe. The thing is we are not dedicated to business areas. We just answer to the market once there is a performance requirement, in fact. So we have, for that, to answer your problems, we are making new features and we're driving our product through our customers' challenges. So at the moment we have organized those challenges into 3 categories. The first one is the market has evolved and our customers are more and more demanding. A couple of years back, people were doing load testing and performance testing, sometimes depending on the release, depending on the project. Now, because of user experience is the key element, we cannot deploy an application with poor performance because that was just have a negative impact on our brand or just going to lose some revenues. So that's why we still want to continue to invest in performance, and this is our main focus at the moment. Second aspect is the process. I mean, since 10 years, people were moved from waterfall to agile. Now companies are reconsidering continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and DevOps. And for that, it's really important from our side to deliver the proper features that will help you to bring our product within your automation framework, your DevOps pipeline. That's why we bring a lot of APIs the last 3 years, a lot of SDK, a lot of things that you can customize our product and plug our product within your automation process. The last is the technology. I mean, we've been focused, we've been a technology-driven company, and for us it's really important that we support our customers. So we support the latest technology. So if you're moving to a new technology, we try to be the first vendor supporting it. For example, WebSocket was the case, HTTP2 as well. Mobile, we've been there since more than 5 years now. And with a big trend of deployment solutions, we provide a lot of Docker containers for you if you want to have a really dynamic load testing architecture as well. So what do we offer on the market? We have 2 products. We have NeoLoad, which is the first baby of the company, which is 12 years old now. Then we have the little brother, NeoSense, which has around 3 years. The combination of the 2 products makes a lot of sense, especially if you want to continuously test your performance during your project lifecycle. So NeoLoad, our main baby, could be used by the developer teams, so they could just implement load testing on a very, very early stage by testing components or APIs and include those tests within your building process. Then if everything is properly in good shape, you can go to the next step where you deploy your application pre-production, and you will focus on more system-wide testing. So here NeoLoad, you can also use it for that, because initially it's been like every load testing on the market. You can record, and I will show you some few things around it to test more the aspect of user experience, capacity planning, and so on. So if something goes wrong on that stage, you can go back, recycle, redo some test and development. But if we see that the quality of the application is good enough, then we can go to production by deploying the application production. And this is where NeoSense comes into place, where you can reuse the testing assets that you've done with NeoLoad and create a proactive monitoring on your production environment. So, and of course, the idea with the monitoring is to get feedback, because we want to recycle, detect issues, and add those elements in our backlog to recycle and do a new release. So that's mainly who we are and what we deliver on the market. Now let's get to the content. So before we get to how to implement performance testing in agile and then of course in DevOps, I think it's important that we take a couple of minutes again to just remind ourselves that performance is the key element, and that's why performance needs to be included at an early stage in testing on a daily basis. So the market has changed, and the customers are very demanding. User experience has been a really key KPI for our customers. Since mobile now, our users are reaching our data or our application through their mobile device directly. So a lot of companies are focused on creating native apps on the market. And if we're not able to deliver proper user experience on the application, then our customers becomes frustrated. They're moving to our competitions, and also they are sharing their experience on social media, which could be a damage for the brand of our company. But what is user experience in fact? How do we define user experience? The thing user experience, there is several layers in that world. There is first, you need a feature, you need something that you need something working. So that's a functionality, and then in the top of that, we will add some design, some ergonomy, usability. So the application needs to be easy to use, needs to be very intuitive. And then, of course, we need some performance. I mean, if the response time is not there, then it will damage the entire user experience. So everything is important. Every layer of that is important. So we need to validate those aspects before we ship our apps in production. Here, this slide here is, I wanted to just extract a couple of references that you can find, in fact, those references in wpostats.org. So it's just highlights that performance is very important for public-facing application, but also for internal applications. And there is, I mean, I could talk about, of course, Amazon, where Amazon, it's not listed here in this slide, but I'm pretty sure that everyone is aware of that study, which is quite old, in fact, because the, well, I think it was in less than 10 years, but the study that they done at that time just proved that every time they were losing or increasing their response time by 100 milliseconds, they were directly losing 1% of revenue. So that was huge for a company like Amazon. And this is similar numbers you can see here in the slides. If you look at Walmart, for example, if with 2% of increase, they increase the conversion rate for 2% for every 1 second of improvement. And the same thing, every 100 milliseconds improvements, it results 1% of revenue. So it's huge. The same thing from Etam, which is a French retailer. It's from the moment they just optimize the web page, they just increase the conversion rate. So there is a direct relation between response times and the business for those with those references. The second thing is we are not patient. I mean, if I go to the restaurant and I order, and I mean nobody I have to wait 30 or 40 minutes, I'm probably start to be annoyed. I won't probably not let that kind of message on the table, but that just highlights how our users are. I mean, if we are bringing application that responds in more than 1 or 2 seconds, then we just making our users stressed and annoyed. So before we go to the agile aspect and how would you do that, let's have a polling question here. So I want to understand on how your development cycles goes, or how long are your development duration for your project? Are you developing, testing? So I would like to understand if you're less completely continuous, or if you have about 1 or 2 week sprint, more than 2 months, or longer than that. So I will leave you a couple of seconds to answer to that poll questions, and then we will, of course, look at the results. That will be very interesting to see where we are at the moment, and if you're fully continuous or halfway, you can see. All right, so let's wait 3 more seconds, and we will look at the results. Okay, so it's very interesting here. So you have most of the attendees today, so 64% of the attendees today has about 1 or 2 weeks iteration, so that's quite good. We have 23% about 1 or 2 months, and 11% about longer than that. And we have 2%, which is less than a day, which is very interesting with those numbers. So let's go to how we do performance testing in Agile, because DevOps is just an extra layer on top of Agile. Before to include performance testing in DevOps, we have, of course, to understand how to do that in Agile as well. So what is interesting here is how we used to do performance testing and what we need to change now to go to with Agile. The way we do load performance testing, I like it to compare to this video games. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's Street Fighter. I'm pretty sure that everyone is aware of that game, I guess. So I don't know if I just remind that the principle of the game. So you have two fighters fighting. You have 3 rounds to win it. And what is interesting, and why should I compare it to performance testing, in fact, is there were a bonus stage. And in fact, this bonus stage, you never know where you had it. So it was a little bit like an option or random stuff. So performance testing at the moment, at that moment, was a little bit like this. So sometimes you had it, sometimes you didn't. And also, the bonus stage here in Street Fighter, the fighter were having that nice, beautiful car arriving on stage, and that was exactly the same thing we had in performance testing. We were waiting to get that application ready. So the application was the car. So we had to wait that everything was assembled, everything was deployed, and then we had to test. And the tester was the fighter. So the fighter here, in this bonus stage, he just hit the car. And the tester at that time, either he had some strategy here or either didn't have any strategy. So the guy was just hitting the car to make some hits, to broke the app. But afterward, what did he really test? And was the test really relevant? Did I really secure my production by hitting that car like this? So I guess no. I mean, and like everything, there is an approach, a methodology, and just hitting doesn't make sense. Sometimes you need to understand what you're doing and not just to have a check on an Excel sheet or somewhere. And that was the thing that would sometimes happen on some couple of projects. The other reference I like to highlight the importance of defining the proper strategy is the Taco-Man narrow bridge. So what is the relation with the performance here? It's really interesting. So for those who doesn't know the story, so in April 1940, the bridge opened, and 3-4 months later, it just collapsed. And what is interesting is the team here, they were testing the bridge. And they knew that they had 2 main constraints. The first one was the capacity of the bridge to handle heavy loads. So you have a lot of cars on the bridge. So one day they decided to load the bridge with lots of cars. And that day there was no wind at all. So they just put the cars, put some measurements, and say, yeah, no problem. Our bridge handled the load. And then the second constraints were the capacity of handle strong winds on that area. And so they waited, had a storm day. They put some measurement on the wind without any car, any load. And they were looking at how the bridge were behaving, and it was behaving quite well. So they said, yeah, we can guarantee that our bridge supports strong winds. So they proved that, yeah, we support the load, we support strong wind. And what happened the day it just collapsed? The day it collapsed was a day with strong winds and cars and a lot of vehicles on it. And in fact, it was the combination of those 2 constraints that make the bridge collapse. And it's exactly the same thing with performance testing. You have a couple of constraints. Sometimes it's the combination of each constraint that will make the issue on the application. So you have to properly understand the constraints and include that in your test. The second thing is what is the standard process to deliver a load test? So that's what we used to do, and we still sometimes do it again. So it's a very predefined process where first you define the strategy. So what will be the load, what will be the constraints I need to test, what kind of tests I need to do to properly test this release. what kind of scenarios I need to include, and so on. Then I go to the next step where I'll have to create scenarios. So to do that, usually with most of the solutions on the market, you record. Then once you have recorded, you have to correlate, because if you don't correlate, of course, you would just generate some static content against your application, and that will just prove that your cache is really efficient, and we know it's efficient, so this is not what we're looking for. Then we have to prepare. So preparing means deploying the application, preparing the load testing of infrastructure, and deploying the monitoring. The monitoring is a key element. I mean, if you don't monitor during your test, it's going to be a mess. Load testing without monitoring, I like to compare it like it's like listening to a horror movie on the radio. You hear people screaming, but you don't know why they are screaming. It's like you need that full picture to see what happens on that movie. And that's exactly what you with performance. You need the full picture to understand what happens. Then we are going to execute the different tests, analyze, and tune. So by tuning, there is two aspects. Tune either on the server side to change the configuration, add some couple of loads, update slightly the architecture, and then if you have nothing could be done on that level, then of course it's a code issue, and we have to figure out which piece of code is a problem to resolve it and recycle afterwards. So that's typical cycle is still true, but when you have lots of releases, when we have lots of tests to be done, then you cannot offer to have that process, because it will be a bottleneck and you will just block your process, your internal process. So we have to implement load tests. We have to change a little bit how we were working. And we have the key of success here to do that is there is a standard path where first we need to consider that performance is important for the business, so we need to include that as the real risks. We analyze the risk, understand if I go to production, what would be the impact for my business, for operation perspective, do I able to scale, and so on. So we have to understand our application to understand what we should test and not test for this specific release. Then, for sure, we don't have the proper time to test everything, so automation is the key. We want to analyze everything. We're going to run tests during our building process, and that's also important because that will help us to cover more, have a better testing coverage. And we need KPIs because this is what we're going to follow. This is what we're going to trend on a daily basis. So we have to define those KPIs as well. And then last is monitoring. So for monitoring and doing load tests makes sense. But once we ship application production, we need to monitor application. I'm not talking about infrastructure monitoring here. I'm talking about APM, of course. Because we fish for problems, we need to feed our backlog. So lack of time, like I mentioned, it means we need to analyze our risks properly, and then we have to define the important user journey. I mean, this is what we've done so far in the last 10 years, no big news. But let's say I'm an e-commerce website. I know for sure that I have a couple of standard action, like people will search, I will browse my catalog, look at products, and buy and add articles in the cart. So those are the main user journey for the e-commerce website. And I need to figure out those user journey. And then because I want to test at an early stage, what I'm going to do from those user journey, I'm going to transcode them into component or API. I need to highlight which APIs, which components are very important for my business, very important for my application. And those would be the key component that we'll test on a daily basis. To cover the risk, of course, I will test them, include the test during the building process, and test them on every day to follow and trend the overall performance of those components. And then once we assemble everything, of course, I need to test the application, how it behaves when we connect everything together. So let's understand the application. I mean, we know that the load, where comes the load? Of course, it comes from the users. No big surprise. But maybe there is a mix of mobile, browser, and then also we often deliver third parties APIs or whatever it is. So we need to also to include that. Sometimes in our environment we have a lot of messages coming in that make also the noise on our environment. So we also to include where the load come from. Then we have to need all the proper questions. How it users works on the systems. Are they connecting in the morning at 8 a.m. and then we have lot of spikes and then they take coffee and it's going down. Or if I work from several geos, for example, maybe you have a user that will start the Asian market starts, and then we have the European market, and then we have US. So some period of time we will have some spikes because we have two locations working on the same time. When they're using, how often they're using it, do I have any marketing plan that will promote my application that will generate some huge spikes? I need to have those numbers. I need to figure out what's going on to properly implement the proper test and proper strategy during my development lifecycle. So for the testing scenarios, we said usually to figure out which main actions I need to test and then transcode that into components. There's two scenarios. Either it's an existing application, so I have the advantage of that. So I have logs, I have lots of assets within the database. I can probably extract the numbers, how many transactions per second, how many orders per second, how many and so on. How many concurrent users I have in my application. I can ask probably the functional architect. They have a lot of numbers around that. The other scenario is the new application. So it's completely new. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if it's going to be a success, but I need to explore how it's going to behave. Probably it will help me to tune a little bit in my application, have an idea of how the capacity planning of an application. But again, if we're investing in this application, it's because there's a business. It will answer to one aspect of my business. So in the business application, there's probably someone has numbers. So let's test at least those numbers to secure our deployment in production. So like I mentioned, testing from the UI is not possible. I mean, if we want to test as early possible, if I want to test from the UI, it means I need to wait that everything is assembled to start testing. And this is not, we cannot offer that because we will have to wait again at the very last moment to start testing, and it's going to be just blocking our process. So that's why we have activities like unit performance testing or component testing. So the idea is to, like mentioned before, to figure out which API, which message, whatever it is behind, is going to be used behind an important use case. So it's not a standard practice, of course, but the advantage of that is that helps us to start testing without to wait that everything is assembled. The second advantage of that is the test case are very simple. A couple of API calls, few variables, and then if it's APIs, most of the time the interface of the APIs doesn't change so much. So if I create it once, then the big chance that I won't have to maintain that scenario again and again. And also, advantage of that, we can test our third-party components. So don't think that the vendor has tested in a lab and those numbers are true. But if you take those components and plug it in your IT environment, maybe the numbers will be slightly different. So we have to secure that by measuring this. So if you want to do that, we need to change our mentality. So we used to do late playback recording performance testing. Now we're going to do performance engineering. We used to implement SLAs based on user action. Now we're going to do SLAs on service calls. So we were doing black box, and it's going to be gray box testing. The workflow, just to remind, so here you figure out a use case, the main use cases that you need. Step one. Step two, you transcode that into components. So which components are important? So here in my example, I've got 3 components, the red one, the gray one, and the blue one. Then we plan our sprints. So we have a pretty good idea when those components will be ready. So once the first components are available, I implement my component testing on that specific component and I include that test in my building process. Then when the second components arise, I have 2 tests running after within my building process. Second thing with the third one, and so on and so on. And then once we have all those components together, then we have a business case ready. So we will test that to see how it reacts when we start connecting those components one together. So the continuous performance validation approach is the following ones, where you do first your requirements, figure out the qualification of the scope, you plan the sprints like mentioned, you do the component testing with NeoLoad and connect it with your CI server, so it could be Jenkins, Bamboo, whatever it is. And then once you finish a sprint, you assemble everything, you ship it to production, then you can do the system-wide testing by focusing on different aspects of the performance, like the user experience, how it reacts when I generate load from several GOs, and so on. And then we ship application in production, and here I'm going to implement the monitoring with another product, Neotys, for example. So let's have a short polling questions before we move to the DevOps, and I'll explain how we do include agile performance testing in agile. We're doing by doing component testing, but how automated are your testing processes? Continuous integration server with automated functional and performance testing, continuous integration server with automated functional testing only, continuous integration server but no automated tests, no continuous integration server, but we are planning to do it in the next year, no continuous integration server, and no plan at all to do that. All right, so I'm going to leave you a couple of 10 seconds, and then let's read the results of this polling question. Okay, so let's have a look at the results of this poll question. So very interesting. So here we can see that 37% of our attendees today are doing continuous integration, and they have mostly include functional testing, which is in fact most of the case what we've seen here from our side. Performance testing and functional testing is included, but only for 8%. So that's we should increase that number from my perspective. And then, of course, if you have no CI server, I would recommend to have it, include that process within your organization. And no, if you're planning to do it, that will help you to automate your process. You will see that. So let's move to the next part of that webinar, where we move from Agile and we want to go to DevOps, continuous delivery, and so on. So the important things before we get to explanation of this, I just want to share some reference from the Work Quality Report 2016 to 17, where people were adopt Agile quite heavily the last 6-7 years now. And what is interesting is because we are customer facing, and by deploying more releases in production, people are reconsidering now DevOps, because DevOps help us to change our application in a more smooth way, to react on our customers. And you can see how the numbers saying 88% of the CIOs are using DevOps, which is huge, and it's going to be more and more like this. So people is considering DevOps a lot. But it's not because we are deploying a lot in our production. We have very short releases that we don't deliver quality. I mean, it's not because your speed is nothing without quality. I mean, if I have the best car in the world and I'm not able to drive it, then it doesn't make sense. I need to make sure that I am deploying that's good, but deploying good and quality, good product for my customer. The last, I think it's the most relevant slide here is DevOps. I mean, DevOps. People think DevOps. I've heard a couple of companies says, "Oh, I moved to DevOps. I have removed the QA. I have removed the ops, and everything is done from the developers." Which could be very interesting, but again, I mean, DevOps is nothing without, say, dev test and ops. I would rather call it DevTestOps, because again, testing is really crucial for achieving quality and speed. So if you do automation, you will see that on a DevOps pipeline, test is one of the steps of the pipeline. So that's why it's important to consider that. So let's have a look at DevOps pipeline. And what is interesting, people talk about DevOps pipeline, DevOps tool chain, but lots of people doesn't really have, doesn't have a lack of information about it. So what is interesting with the tool chain? In fact, it's a combination of several tools. In fact, we will be using those tools in the past. It's not that we're going to plug them all together to automate everything, to deploy everything in production. So on the tool chain, there are several families of solutions. First, we need, of course, a planning product. So that's not new. We've been doing it. We need to affect tasks. We need to make everything transparent for every test stakeholders, where we are, what are the status of this task, and so on. Then we need a source control. We've been using it. SVN a couple of years back. Now we are Git or GitHub or Bitbucket. So we need to track the change of the code. But not necessarily only the code here. We will see that we will track the code, the infrastructure, the configuration, the deployment. Everything is all, even the test will be also in the source control. That's I can say the heart of our process. Then we need a configuration management, because the way we're going to deploy our application within dev or QA or pre-production or prod directly are still a difference. In dev, maybe you have one single machine with the database and the application. If I have in QA, I probably have more nodes around it. So the way we deploy on one environment to another is still different, and we need to configure that, and that will be treated exactly like code. So configuration now could be coded directly. Of course, we need a continuous integration server. Continuous integration server is the most important piece because it will orchestrate everything. That will define our pipeline. Then we need some deployment tools. And so if we deploy everything in production or in the cloud, whatever it is, we need some solution that will help us to make the deployment. Testing, like I mentioned, is important. We need to automate the testing on that and validate that. And last, of course, is APM. Once we get to production, we need to follow the user experience, the availability of our users. We need to monitor that to follow and change the application if required. So let's have an example of a pipeline. So for the first step, it will be the build. So here we have at the right, you have a GRL here with the task. We have a task for the coder. The coder take the task, make some change on the code, commit the change in Git, and then maybe Jenkins has been configured to detect any change on Git, so he will trigger direct a build. So once we prepare a build, the first step, of course, is to check out the last version of the application. He compile, he package through Maven, for example, and then he send the package to Nexus to make those packages available for the others. Step number 2 is deploy. So we have this application that has been compiled, and then I'm going to deploy some. I'm going to grab the configuration scripts that would be on the source control, so Git. So that could be a configuration script like Puppet or Chef. And if I have to deploy, for example, in Dev, then I would take the scripts related to Dev, and then I will deploy that with different products. I could use containers like Docker or Vagrant. I could use a Cloud Foundry or OpenStack, or there are a lot of great products for that. So I can deploy that by using those solutions. So yeah, of course, depending on the environment, like I mentioned, the configuration or the way we're going to deploy will be different, and that is on the script based. Third step is test. So here I'm going to launch the testing process automatically in Jenkins. So first, there is, of course, those testing activities. We maybe not do every testing activities in Dev, piece of them, and QA will be more. UAT probably more than in Dev. But this is an example of a couple of different type of tests. So first, we will do a JUnit test at the code level. So we do white box testing by looking at the quality of the code. If that step goes well, we go to the next step, which is functional. So run some Selenium scripts or Perfecto if you're on mobile space. And then if that step works fine, we can go to the next step, which is performance, doing the component testing if you're at the sprint level, and then more system-wide testing if you're at the QA level. And then, of course, security is very important, so we can also run those. And every time you have a testing activity, the idea is to share if that test passed or failed, and we're going to track that directly, automatically in Jira, if of course you have Jira, to be able to follow the quality. And last, of course, if we've passed everything, QA, passed everything in all those different environments, then we can release. So we will take the configuration management related to the production environment, deploy it on production, and of course make sure that we have the APM plugged to our production environment. So that was an example of the full example of a pipeline. There is, of course, you can code the pipeline, so there is no fixed pipeline, but just at least give you an idea of what you can do with that. So let's before we go to a demonstration, try to go it very fast because I'm looking at time. But let's have a poll question here, and then switch to the demonstration. So where is performance testing within your project life cycle? Is it a mandatory step on every CI process? We only test once or twice a year, or it's not part of the project life cycle yet. We'll leave you 10 seconds, and then we will have a look at the results to see how mature you are. And sure, maybe for those who's a mandatory step on every CI process, probably what I've just spoke today is you're pretty aware of it, so there is no big news for you. Okay, so let's look at the results. So here, very interesting. So here I can see that 43% of the attendees here is doing some tests once or twice a year. So probably more tests when the application is ready before major event or marketing event, I guess. So still, I mean, that's of course still important, but to secure, I think, including testing CI will be very important. And that's what we have. The second result here, 36% is doing it. So that's a really good number. I'm really impressed about it. And last, of course, is 20% with it's not part of the project lifecycle. Okay, so here, like mentioned, I want to do a short demonstration to highlight an example of a pipeline. Here it is. So that's my environment. So that's NeoLoad. But before we get to NeoLoad, what I would like to show you is a Jenkins. So, so sorry for that. For those who doesn't understand French, my Jenkins is in French. So I will try to explain everything one by one. So let's have a look first on, we have an application called Weather Crisis here, which is in fact used to report weather incidents around the globe. The idea is you can either report by the web, by the native app. So it's customer-facing application, and then you have another community of users, which is the scientists that could report, they receive alerts, and so on. So the main component here that has been highlighted here in this story is it's the alert component for the scientists, and we have another main component, which is the report component. And here in this process here, we have created a pipeline. So I didn't do the full pipeline here, but at least it highlights an example. So it's a Groovy scripts pipeline where first I check out the code, which is in fact on GitHub. I built the application, and then I run the different unit tests, which is in fact all the unit tests in this project is done by Selenium through JUnit format. And then I want to be able to run the tests as an early stage. So we have a really cool feature here within a product, which is the ability to convert unit scripts, JUnit scripts, Selenium format into NeoLoad. And that's the fourth step here that we have here. So the main purpose of that is sending the assets of Selenium to NeoLoad. And once it's in NeoLoad, you can run the test. Of course, if you have hundreds of test cases in the JUnit format, it doesn't make sense to send everything. So I would just specify which test case I want to send to NeoLoad, because if I send the full stack, then it's just going to be a mess. I will have too much things to test, and it's not relevant. And here, what I would highlight here is I'm launching a test here, so I'm launching a job, which is was available in the front screen. I could show you the GUI script, but it doesn't make sense. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the test I'm running. It's the report component, which is an API testing. I will show you in NeoLoad what it is. And the main idea is good to run tests on a daily basis. We have this integration with Jenkins, and the main idea of the integration is to trend the performance. And that's the main idea of this plugin with Jenkins, where you can see here we have the build number here, and we have 3 main graphs by default. And you can see the trend, the overall trend of the performance. You can see that at the build number 53, we had some regressions where the response time started increased on that API call, and we started also to have a couple of errors as well. So there's something went wrong on that. And then, of course, you can customize your dashboards by defining other type of graphs. So here I've wanted to also trend the percentile graphs of those API calls. But you can also imagine to trend the CPU. What is this CPU consumption on my server? The memory footprint of that API on my server. So that also could be a key KPI. So it really depends on the KPI you want to follow. Here, of course, you can, if you want to have a look, you can go to one of the builds here by clicking directly on detail the big build, see the JUnit reports. But of course, you can have a click directly on the performance testing results to at least see what happened and have a big overview. But the main idea there is behind the scene, Jenkins is publishing the results in our component called the team server, which means I could have my Jenkins server located in San Francisco, and I have a couple of developers based in New York, and those new developers could simply go open NeoLoad. Oh, I have a license, I'm sorry about it. And grab the results back in his laptop and do the analysis from there. So I'm going to just grab the license. I'm going to show you. So which means if there's a problem, I click here on this button to see the remote results manager, where it shows all the results published by Jenkins here. So Jenkins, you can see it's the only contributor here of this test results. But and then I can of course select the result time that was the main problem during the build. I get it back on my laptop, and then once it's on in NeoLoad, I can simply go back to the result section here, and here I have. I just can start doing the analysis. So here I do it's an alert component test here. I can look at the report API and the response times. I can look at the hits to see if we have a better or less important hit on this API call. So you can trend whatever you want, and then you can combine it with the monitoring. So you can say I want to look at the CPU, so on. So you can do the analysis that you want to figure out what happened and what caused that regression. At the design perspective, so here I'm going very fast here, but the design here is where you define the scenario, the results is where you analyze, runtime is where you test. You can define the different tests. Of course, to define tests, you can record if you want, but here in my case, I just want to highlight the report component scenario that we had just talked about it. So it's basically just one API call. Like mentioned, it's very easy. I defined the API call. It's a couple of calls with the interface didn't change so much. And here, what I need here is I'm not going to send the same call on every thousands of times. Doesn't make sense. I need to correlate that. So that's why I have custom couple of data sets. The data could be a CSV files, could be SQL variables, and the idea is to correlate to make sure that I'm not going to send the same traffic again and again, and I'm able to properly and realistically test my application. And of course, something I didn't mention, but if you have a CI server, you need to define SLAs, because if you want to have a Genius report about it, you need to define the SLAs related to these API calls. So here we have defined that if the response time answered in less than 1 second, that's fine. But over than 2.65 seconds, it's going to be a mess. And then, of course, we should go further. We could then, once you remove from the component testing and go to the pure system-wide testing, I can also use NeoLoad for that. But the difference here, I will do some tests which is more on the browser in my perspective here, so I've recorded it. So those are a couple of scenarios. I record also the scenario with the mobile application. So I have it. I have also correlated, and then I could also combine other testing solutions. So in my case, I reuse some Selenium assets to measure the user experience through the browser and attacked through Selenium. On the system-wide testing here, I will also include different type of network, because I know that my users are connected with several type of networks. I will include the latency, packet loss of mobile users, how the users are organized with my organization, how are they connected, and that will help me to define the proper load on the environment. And Neil also didn't mention that, but we will set the monitoring important, because if you run the test without monitoring, then it's going to just simply a mess. And then if I run a test, I will run the test by defining which machine will generate the load. So this is what you see here. So it can be either on-premise-based machines, load generators, or if I want to take advantage of Neotys cloud platform to generate the load from the cloud here. So if I know that I have users based in Asia, based in US, in Europe, I can take advantage of the cloud platform to select which location I would like to use for my tests, and spin up machines for those locations directly. Once you use the cloud here, you see on the result sections, you have a dedicated dashboard from the cloud, and this will highlight, in fact, and so that's not a cloud test, I'm going to select the cloud test on that. Here it is, for example, this one. If you, on the cloud dashboards, it makes sense because it highlights the locations that were having the best response times and those who were having the worst response times. So it takes quite a while here. I don't know why it's got slowed down. Here it is. You got the map. You see here in the red, you can see those locations are red because obviously they are. If I click on the locations here in this area, is slowly but surely you will have the graph appearing. You'll see what was the ratio in terms of performance compared to the other locations. But of course, if you scroll down to the bottom of that summary report there, you will see the statistics more deeply, that every locations are compared, and that will highlight which locations were delivering the worst response times for the users. I can talk a lot about our products, but I'm looking at the watch. We're running out of time. So I think it's better that we switch to the Q&A sessions. If you are interested, of course, we could have more intense sessions on NeoLoad. But I think today it's fair enough. And if you were interested, I would be love to show you more things about products.
All right. Thank you so much, Henrik. As you said, we are running a little bit low on time, but we absolutely still have time for some Q&A. Remember that you can ask questions by typing them in the field beneath the panels and by clicking the submit button. For any questions we don't get to live, we will answer some offline. So again, we have a lot of good stuff coming in. So let's start right over here with this one. This person mentions that Agile is all about quick feedback. So if the performance test is in the build cycle, how long does it run?
That's a really good question. Usually when it's if it's an API pure component testing, what you're fishing for is the trend. And if you do, let's say, you know that you will have 100 calls per second on API, you do a load test on that, you can run a 15-minute test or 20-minute test. The idea is to trend. Yeah? You're not here to overstress. It's to get a feedback on every cycle. Of course, more API testing, more component testing you add on the process, and that will just increase the duration of your build. But again, if you are organizing microservice architecture, often you have a separate build for each API, so that will impact the entire build.
All right. Thank you so much for that additional information. This person asked, does NeoLoad have SLA on page transaction and as well as the test level?
Yeah, of course, yeah. You can define SLAs on response times, on hit per second, on errors, on number of transactions per second. There's a different type of SLA. I didn't go deeper on that, but it's on this SLA section here. There's lots of different options.
All right. We have a good technical question here. This person asks, how complex is it to include NeoLoad into the existing Jenkins workflow?
It really depends on how your, we have the NeoLoad job plugin available on the Jenkins portal, so you can download it for free. And the idea is if you can either create a separate job and then define your pipeline by defining that you have a initial job and the job after will be this one. So it's just about configuring the process of your build. I would say that defining through Groovy scripts will be faster. Again, at the moment, our plugin is what we want at the end of this year is to provide to the community some Groovy libraries, so that will be more easier to define to include your test on that. But it's just a matter of defining the test, and once you have it, it's just plugging each job one by one.
All right, and this one calls back to a little bit earlier in the deck. One of the slides had mentioned the idea of this increase in conversion. This person kind of wanted you to clarify what exactly that meant, if you know exactly what they're referencing.
Yes, so increase on conversion is on the e-commerce websites, most of those companies are looking at the conversion rates. It's the number of users going on the buying process and buying articles. So that's a very important KPIs that those companies are looking at. You can imagine, in fact, by the way, that we can imagine that to emulate that conversion rate number, so by using APM solution, for example, on the market, plugged to your pre-production environment to measure the current business status while you were doing the load testing on this specific release. That would be a cool feature to have. It's just a matter of creating a dashboard on the proper APM solution. But I think that would be relevant because that would talk to the proper stakeholders.
All right. Thank you so much. We have time for just about one more question, so let's go to this one because I think there's probably something you get pretty often. This person asks, is NeoLoad also able to test mobile applications?
Yes, of course, yeah. So this is something we've been done since 5 years. So the idea is we were able to record the traffic from mobile applications, so we'll have the scenarios there. And we have a very strong partner ecosystems on that area. So we have integration with Perfecto. We have integration with several vendors of the market, which allows you to combine NeoLoad to generate the load on the infrastructure. So 99% of the load will come from NeoLoad, and then include a couple of users on real devices to measure the user experience there from a real device.
All right, great. And before I close the web seminar, I didn't really give you a chance to. If you'd like to go over some of these next steps with the audience, it'd be a good time to do so.
Yeah, so what I would definitely recommend, our product is, there is a premium release, free edition, which is limited to 50 virtual users. The best is go to the website, have a try, download it. There is a lot of different assets, a lot of document videos available if you want to see our product or having more details on the product. So I would definitely recommend to visit our website. If you have anything, any questions, of course, I will be very pleased to answer them. So here is my email contact address. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, of course, it will be an honor to push information to you guys.
All right, fantastic. That ends our event for today. I'd like to thank our speaker, Henrik, for his time. I'd like to thank Neotys for sponsoring this event. Also, a special thank you goes out to you, the audience, for spending the last hour with us. Have a great day, and we hope to see you at a future event.